Hello, hello, my beautiful people. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Working It Out with Damien Michael. And I'm your guest host, Damien Michael Williams. This is the season finale of our first season here with Working It Out. And me as your host, Damien Michael Williams. I have to stop and say, this journey has been needed, has been worth it. And it's been quite vital, to say the least. Um, and I'm enjoying this journey because not only is it, I'm sure it's helping all of you, but it's also helping me because, as all of you know, I deal with chronic depression and high anxiety. Who knew? But yes, today I'm extremely excited about this show. We have someone who we here at Working It Out with Damien Michael, we consider him as family. And this gentleman, and you guys know him, he goes by Dr. Kyle Schultz, and we will be talking to him very soon. And here he is!
Hey, Damien. Good to see you again.
Dr. Kyle, you're back! How are you, man?
I'm good. I mean, things are chugging along. I mean, some of the stuff in the news is disconcerting, but it seems like we all end up pushing along. So.
To say the least, yeah, I feel you. It's a lot going on in this world.
Yeah.
I mean, so this conversation, is definitely needed on all parts. So before we go into it, I want to hit on and just share with our viewers, because as most of us all know, and for those of you that don't know, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the month of October. And I've had friends of my mother, friends of family, good, solid people. And that's one of the things about cancer, period, that has really just put a bad taste in my mouth, to say the least, because it seems like it gets all of the good people, the good-hearted people, the good, solid people that just have nothing but love and positive energy to give, and they're taken away. They transition on. But breast cancer, is something that is not only dominant with females, but also with males, as many don't talk about. So, what has been in your experience, Dr. Kyle, first of all, with do you know anyone who's been through that, or?
Yeah, I don't personally, not professionally, who've experienced issues related to breast cancer, and it is certainly something that can certainly be very devastating, obviously. But one of the things that I think I'm sort of heartened by is that some folks do survive, and so I think that it's important when we're thinking about breast cancer that we sort of think about both everyone who sort of struggles through it, but particularly that there is hope, that it is something that we can sort of hold on to when struggling with news like that. More than a few people who've had double mastectomies, preemptive, or what have you. So I think that there's a lot of work and time going into trying to help people with that.
Wow. Yeah, and even more so, one of the things that was brought to my attention, and also I really thought about it, because who knew that you would need counseling after you go through that process? And not only the patient, but also the family and friends.
Yeah.
Those who are close in proximity.
Well, and I mean, I know that sometimes the word trauma gets thrown around a lot in society, particularly more recently, but I think that it's an apt description for a lot of people when you are quite literally faced with the death of yourself or someone that you're very close with. I think sometimes people might forget at times that breast cancer isn't just a medical thing to struggle with, but it's also a psychological thing that you end up struggling with. So both of these things are important and relevant, not just as someone goes through treatment, but even after, as they make sense of their life. And people sort of grapple with this question of, am I going to live? Am I not going to live? And what does that mean for my life? And they're deep, meaningful questions that aren't easily unwound in like a session or two.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I can only imagine those who have had family members to either pass on the hat or either also went through that process and experience and the trauma they may have gone through just seeing their loved ones go through that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's just mentally traumatic in more ways than one and
Yeah.
emotionally. And, so that's why I want to also share with our viewers, those of you out there who have been through that or know someone close who has been through that. It's good to seek counseling or therapy afterwards.
Yeah.
It's okay to do so. It would be healthy. And also, I'll go even further, it'll be wise
Yeah.
for your own mental health and yourself and life balance and wholeness. Because, a lot of us, I realize in general, when we go through life and life situations and trauma, a little particle, whether it be small or great, stays with us. And it's the reason why it stays with us is because we don't confront, or some of us aren't even aware that it's there because we've made it a part of our everyday life. Whether it be, something, that has stayed with you from emotional or mental or what have you. So the importance of therapy is just, as you said before, vital. It really is. It really is in more ways than one. And I'm so glad in this day and time, Dr. Kyle, that the stigma around, because, back in the day, if you went to see as what we called a shrink, you're like, oh, he or she is nuts. It's like, no, actually, they're balanced or they're reaching for their wholeness and their balance. So the importance of mental health and therapy and seeking counseling it's vital. It's extremely vital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also sort of makes me think about the way, like, I think that the stigma related to seeking mental health counseling services is still alive and well in the US. It's not, depending on where you come from and what your family, your culture thinks about mental health and counseling, you could very much still be seen as crazy, or that there's something wrong with you, or that you should be talking to a religious figure rather than a counselor. You should be keeping it within the family is something that I hear often. And I have students actually who are in the program that I teach in, who come from all over the world and talk about the ways in which in different cultures, people who have mental illness are sort of put away. They're sort of hidden away, that it's kind of a shame on families. And so, but even in the United States, I think that we really have to think about the people that we're working with. Do they have the support to get mental health services if there's all this stigma?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that stigma is something, and it's been around, as I always felt, for too long. Because for so long I didn't know I needed it. Especially from my upbringing, I thought if I just pray, I would be okay. Yes, prayer is effective and it's powerful, but you have to also do your part. You have to be accountable for yourself.
Yeah.
And for your well-being.
Yeah.
And I'm even at this age, I'm learning still how to be accountable for my well-being in all aspects, and especially mentally and emotionally and psychologically. Wholeness is also vital as well. Balance is vital. Balance is life.
Yeah.
So I totally concur and agree with you in that. And I'm excited that you're here, and I'm also excited about this show because we're going to just dive into your world, Dr. Kyle. We're going to talk about some good bullet points and some things that our viewers can take home with them and, or take note and take mental note and find out where they can really get some help and why is it needed for them to have help, even if you think you're okay.
Yep.
That's most times where, that's one of the reasons why we have such shows that Snapped. And those other shows where it's like, oh my God, they were such great people. We don't know what happened. Yeah.
So often, I think I mentioned this last show, like we don't really know what's going on inside people's minds, and people are particularly adept at keeping some of those things secret, not only from other people, but even from themselves. the campus I work on, at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the phrases that they use is the idea of pen face, and it's particularly common in undergrads at the university, where the idea is that you sort of present as if everything's fine, you're successful, you're thriving, you're doing well, you're taking advantage of everything that you have at school, but underneath you're struggling with self-doubt, insecurity, maybe financial troubles related to identity or family, and yeah, I think that it can sometimes be hard for people even to see that for themselves.
Truth, truth. I totally agree. I mean, I can't even talk about the endless times I've dealt with all of those things that you just listed. Those are
Yeah,
some of my personal bullet points.
yeah,
So, I mean, self-doubt, because that's why now, especially since I have sought out therapy and done the work and
mm,
still doing the work, um, I have such a greater confidence about myself.
hmm,
Being a big size man,
yeah,
full figured as I call full and complete. Um, it's I'm through this journey. I'm learning even more so my self worth,
mm,
because when your eyes are open to things about yourself, not only do you see the bad, but you also see the good
yeah,
and things and most of the times that good part we never focus on. We're so
yeah,
focused on this bad, even if it's just one thing. It's just
yeah.
like, okay, even though yes, you need to tend to it, but there's a balance.
Yeah. Well, people so often start counseling and therapy specifically because something's going wrong, and
Mhm.
they want it to stop. And oftentimes people will just say, I just want to feel better, which is, I mean, it's not a bad thing to want. But it often ends up having us focus specifically on the problem and getting rid of it, which is, again, understandable, but not necessarily some of the ways in which we grow and learn about ourselves in therapy in ways that we just wouldn't do if we didn't have those deep conversations with somebody.
Right, right. It's all about those undercover things
Yeah.
that, as you said, we don't know it's going on, but it's actually going on. And
Yeah.
especially, when you look at how the human mind works, and if this thing is not right, it'll jack you up.
Yeah, I agree.
It will jack you up, and I'm a living witness. So I really had to find not only a balance, but self peace, some
Mm.
peace of mind. Because at sometimes, and I also understand because I've had my bouts with suicide as well.
Mm.
So, you know, unfortunately, it can go there
Oh
because
yeah.
at some point you get tired of fighting.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why, even with all the things that I post,
Mm.
I make it a point, if not every day, every other day, to post something encouraging.
Yeah.
And I go so far as to check on, I'm like, okay, all my, chronic depression people or whatever you're dealing with, are you okay?
Yeah.
It's good to reach out, because it's one of the life lessons that, I'm glad that my mother taught me, that you're not on this earth just for yourself.
No. And
You
I mean,
know,
this
yeah.
this social support is it's one of the key indicators of mental health, and one of the things that very much helps people experience mental health. Those
Mm-hmm.
connections with other people, not just. I mean, I tend to think about things in an attachment perspective, and when we think about our attachment relationships, whether it's to our parents, or family, our close friends, or romantic partners, that attachment is really rooted in this idea that I feel safe and secure within this
Mm-hmm.
relationship with this other person. And when we become disconnected with other people, that attachment feels more tenuous and we feel less safe, we feel less secure. And so keeping those relationships up isn't, I mean, there's something deeper going on than just calling and checking in, especially if you allow the conversation to be meaningful and not just our typical, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm good, in a way that isn't really connecting with another person.
Mm-hmm. So true, so true. And it's good and it's so funny, that you say that, because when you said that, it just brought back to me those people even in my past years
Mhm.
that were close to me and they knew me.
Yeah,
Because it's important to have someone that supports you, not only supports you, but it's concerned about your well being.
of course.
it's great to have a listening ear. It's amazing to have a listening ear.
Mm-hmm.
And have the dynamics of true friendship
Mm-hmm.
and a covenant. But I will never forget. It was one time I was just battling. It seemed like there was just a civil war going on inside of me,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my older god brothers, he asked me. He said, "Are you okay?" And of course, like you said, "Oh, I'm good." It's like, tell that to somebody who doesn't know you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was just that type of support is needed.
Of course.
Needed, which brings me to our one of our first topics here. Number one, is it better to preemptively find a therapist rather than when you are in a moment of crisis or high stress?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and this is something that I think is important. Most of people think that I go to counseling because something's wrong, and they're not. They're not wrong about that. Like that's typically how and why people go. But my preference is to shift the way that we think about counseling and psychotherapy to a more preventative kind of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I go not because things are on fire and the world is coming down around me, but I go because I'm really going to try and take care of myself. And I know that there are things that I could work on that if I don't work on them, they're going to eventually hit a crisis or a high stress situation. And I believe that counseling and therapy can and should be a way for us to do that work before is significantly necessary. And
Right.
and again, like I mentioned last show, that I know that counseling and psychotherapy is very much an economic and financial issue. So I don't want to sort of pass it off as if everyone's got money, time, effort, and connections to do that. But to me, I've been in therapy for multiple years in my own life, and I've found it very much in moments in which there weren't crisis or stress going on in my life, just ways to bolster me for when those things do come. I feel I'm much more able to deal with them when it happens.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've run into that myself. Um, Also with friends, because as us black folks say, not insurance but showings. You got to have some good showings,
Yep. Yeah, no, that's great.
to get somewhere, because these doctors want to get paid, and I don't knock that.
Yeah.
But there also has to be something and someone for everybody.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. And a lot of people, that's the only unfortunate thing about I've learned with humankind is that the answers can be right here,
Yep.
and we still won't search it out. We won't research. We won't do the work, unless somebody just gives it to us. And I've realized a lot of things have been tangible. I just didn't know they were there. But why? I didn't look for it.
Well, and I mean, that's why the help of a trained professional who there's times in which I feel like my job is very easy, because what's really interesting is to watch someone talk about some of the stuff going on in their life, and as a listener, just to hear their story and to sort of point something out to them that they've told me, but they don't realize what it is they've told me. And so even one of the basic counseling skills that I teach students is the idea of reflective listening. And so when I say something back to you that you've said to me in a way that evidences that I've heard you and I understand, that also has an effect on you of like, oh yeah, I guess that really is a thing.
Right.
Because someone else is sort of pointing it out to you, and not in a bad way, but just sort of pointing out a way that you think about something, or the way that you react to something, or connections between your thoughts and feelings and behavior.
Right.
And so,
I call that good aha moment.
yeah. And so I think that having someone who helps you to make sense, and I think I mentioned this last session too, that helping you make sense of your own mind and how it works is good mental health. It's how we avoid the stress and the crisis when it comes up, or at least buffer it when it happens.
True enough. True enough. I mean, I have great friends, and even one that's working on the show right now. I appreciate those people that I could bounce off of positive, because you need somebody to have a mirror and do this.
Yep.
Like, okay, this is you. Like,
Yeah.
the old commercial, this is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? You know, so it's good to have that mirror.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, this is good, but this is something we also need to look at, you
Yeah.
know,
And
need to
yeah, I don't think we always get that from our friends or family members or our partners, what have you, because it's, first of all, it's not always appropriate for them to share these things with us. And other times I think that we can become so defensive to someone coming for us or what we think is coming for us rather than helping us to grow that we say, screw it, you know, whatever language you want to use with that. Like, no, I don't want to hear it. Whatever you got to say, I don't want to hear it. Whereas therapists, there are things that I feel like I can say to my patients that I think that they wouldn't let their close friends or family members or partners say to them because they take it as disrespectful. But my job is really to sort of point out what I see, particularly as it relates to some of the troubles that you have in your life.
right, and that's a fine line
It is.
because you know us people, you know, those of us who deal with mental health on any level, our defense is like up high,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's why the importance of finding a good therapist. I'm glad we are going to talk about this more today because it's not something that I think everyone knows what the process is and what it involves and what's important in it.
Now that brings me to our next uh, subject, or number two, should I say? It says make an honest assessment of how much you can financially afford. Just mentioned that. So depending on using insurance or paying out of pocket, or how long you think you will need to work on your issues.
Yeah.
So so to me that says even if you don't have that higher level of insurance, you will have to budget for this. But
Yeah.
this will be a great investment because this is investing in you.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think that it is important to really think about, like, what do I need to work on and how much time do I really need? Counseling and psychotherapy is not a 1, 2, 3 session kind of thing, at least in the way that I think that is most useful. I'm not saying you can't get anything out of 1 or 2 or 3 sessions, but to me, a deeper relationship. I even tell my students that I think that to be good counselors, you have to be in therapy for at least 6 months to a year, not just solving a problem, but getting to know yourself so that you can work with your own clients. But in terms of an assessment of how much you can financially afford, like, insurance does come into it. And for folks who have insurance, they have to check into their in-network providers. So anyone who has insurance, first of all, you have to check to see whether or not you have mental health coverage. Most plans do. And most insurances will have a panel of clinicians who are on it that they can use their insurance. And to me, I think that's a great thing that is offered to people. And it's much more inexpensive. People will have copays of $10, $15, $20, as opposed to paying $100, $150, $200 out of pocket. And so for folks who are listening who have the financial means to have really good insurance, your insurance will likely cover most of what you're looking for.
Okay.
And even for folks who have the financial means who are watching, you could even pay out of pocket if you want to see someone out of network. But again, it then ends up being an expense that we have to ask ourselves, like, will I invest this money and this time in this process? And so
Now,
it's something.
with you mentioning that, excuse me, while you mentioning that, what about those who have Medicare and Medi-Cal?
So depending on where you're from, Medi-Cal, I imagine, is for California.
Yes.
Yeah. So in Philly, we have Medicare, Medicaid, and it's for folks who don't have medical insurance or older folks. In Philadelphia, we have something called community behavioral health. Most
Okay.
cities have some community behavioral health component, and often counties will have these services as well. And they're essentially places where people can go to get services for free. So having worked in Philadelphia's community mental health clinics, people who are on Medicare or Medicaid get their sessions paid for. They don't have to worry about it. And so depending on where people are from, tapping into, okay, what does my city or my town or my county offer in terms of mental health services? And I know that you'll send out some of these links in a moment, but there's also something called the Open Path Collective, which is an online resource that connects clients to significantly lower fee clinicians.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely doing my homework with all the information that I received from you, as well as doing my own personal research.
Mhm.
And also, if to all the viewers, you can see right there at the bottom of the screen for lower fee counseling, there's openpathcollective.org. That's www.openpathcollective.org. Okay, all right. But yeah, I was doing my research and my homework, and I mean the long, extensive list of different types of therapy and therapists.
Mhm.
I was just blown away. I'm like, wow, it's not just one kind, you
Yeah.
know. And so that brings me to number three,
Mhm.
which basically states become informed about what types of therapists and therapy approaches you would most benefit from.
Yeah.
And that, as I was going through it, I have to say, because there's like acceptance and commitment, there's Aldarian, there's animal assisted, the list goes on. You
Mhm.
know, please share with us,
Yeah,
Dr.
sure.
Kelly.
One more point about the last point that I think is important is some people ask the question, like when they first start counseling therapy, like, how long am I going to need? I can't totally tell you that. Like, I can tell you that we can work on the specific issue that you brought in, and we might be able to make some headway in 3 months on that.
Okay,
It
yeah,
all depends on how you respond, how the environment responds to you. But I can't guarantee anything. But uh, folks have to sort of have an idea when they start. Like, I think I can do this for about 3 months. I think I can do this for about 6 months, or maybe even more than that. And also, your therapist should be able to tell you to some degree, this is going to be a bit of a longer kind of thing. So when I
hmm,
work with something like trauma, some folks believe you can get in and out dealing with trauma in 3 months. That's not my experience with clients who I've worked with. So your
right,
therapist can tell you these things, but it does sort of connect with this next point about the types of therapy that are available, and the approaches that you would most benefit from. So one of the links that I gave you offers you a list from psychologytoday.com. One of the things
yes,
that I'll talk about in a moment, that essentially tells you all of the different types of therapy. And so for those of you who don't know it, psychologytoday.com is really the place to go to find a therapist.
it's
Uh,
amazing, amazing.
if you put in the city that you're from, let's say San Francisco, and uh, psychologist, therapist, the first link that will come up on Google will say Psychology Today. And Psychology Today is great because it's essentially just a giant directory of therapists who you can work with. You can search through Psychology Today based on the insurance that you're looking for, the specific problem that you're dealing with, the type of therapist that you're looking for, the type of approach that they use. And so there's a lot of options. It can be a little overwhelming, but you should take your time with
Right,
it.
yes, yeah, because I definitely, when I went on the site, I was like, whoa, which button do I push? You know, and also going back to what you just stated, the importance of, I always use metaphors, and you know how in the beginning of a book,
Mhm.
there's the preface.
Yeah.
And so many of us, we just go that far, but we never go into the book. And
Yeah.
which, you know, when you were speaking about, and that came to me as you were talking about the importance of going the distance. You know, not just planning to go to, or you know, 2 or 3 sessions. Oh yeah, I go to therapy. No, that's not gonna. You know, you haven't actually, even in your fifth from experience, even in your fifth session, you really haven't even fully touched the surface yet.
Yeah. Well, and related to the type of approach, this is why that's important. That there are some very short-term approaches that are a few sessions, some short-term approaches that are 3 months. In the field, I think short-term is considered about 3 to 6 months. I mean, anything over 6 months, in my opinion, it tends to be a longer term. But for some approaches, they are on it from the start. That you may have an evaluation for maybe a session or two, but there's a very structured way about going about the work. Now, some people, some of your listeners, might really enjoy that way of doing it. They might like the idea of someone ushering them through and being very methodical and very structured, whereas others want some space to take their time with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
talked with patients before, noting that some practices are very much focused on the present, that everything you talk about is what's going on in your life currently. That can be helpful, but I also know that a good amount of people who come to see me are also looking to talk about things that have happened in the past.
Right.
I identify more as a psychoanalytic practitioner, which people often think is an approach that is dead, or that it should be left behind in terms of therapy approaches. But it really sort of focuses on how does your development influence who you are, for positive and maybe some more problematic things. It also takes into account the idea that not everything that we're conscious of is the whole story. And so from my perspective, part of what I'm offering folks is an ability to sort of see the things that are going on underneath the surface that they're not consciously thinking of.
So true. So true. I
Yeah.
totally agree. It's what about for those who have a crazy work schedule and want to do the work, want to come to the sessions, but sometimes it's conflicting. Are there those therapists that will work with you with that?
Yeah. It is. In my experience in those situations, the person has to really kind of show that they do want to work with it. If I get a referral for someone who tells me, I want to do this, but I can only come once a month, I don't know that you're ready to sort of deal with whatever is going on. And I don't think that once a month therapy, particularly when someone's struggling, is going to be effective or useful. But I think that if someone were to come to me and say, I have this job, I have 2 or 3 jobs, and it's really hard for me to make it, can we make an arrangement between the 2 of us? And depending on what my schedule looks like, I might say, okay, I'm comfortable with us meeting at this time on a regular basis. I'm comfortable shifting, but we have to meet regularly for this to work. I'll stretch if you'll stretch.
Okay.
And it obviously has to be a bit of a negotiation, because you have to sort of figure out what actually works for you or what doesn't. And as a therapist, I also, when folks approach me about something in this similar to this, I'm thinking about, I'm trying to be helpful, and I want to make sure that I give this person what they need. I also have in mind, like, is the person ambivalent about starting this process? And they're telling me from the start, well, I don't know that I'm going to be fully into this. I might be in and out. I'm more likely to talk about that in the first session or 2, and what might be behind that, so that we can be on track moving forward.
Right. And what would you say, or what would you recommend? How many times weekly, bi-weekly, how many times should anybody come to therapists for a good balance and to see any results?
I think that once a week is a good start. It's the most common. I mean, depending on finances, I think if people can go more than once a week, I think that especially in the beginning, that can be really helpful, particularly when people are really struggling. So most therapists, I think, are open to that if it seems like a good idea. I don't typically accept clients who want to go every other week from the start. I don't know you well enough, and I view therapy not as a transactional process in which I give you information and you leave, and that can be one way of doing it. I view therapy as being partially healing, because there's a relationship that develops over time. And so some folks we might not be a good fit together, because what they're looking for is not what I think is best, or what I tend to offer folks.
Awesome. I mean, I definitely, the sessions that I've had, and especially before the pandemic, it was definitely, if not every 2 weeks, they're every week, and they were so helpful.
Yeah.
It really, brought me to a center place, and a place of atonement, because it showed me.
Yeah.
I not only did I hear those things that were helpful, but also heard those things that I didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And even something like that, people are open to hearing things they don't want to hear if they know you and they feel comfortable, safe, and secure with you. And so, I'm going to share with clients what I think and feel. I'm more nervous if I don't feel like I have a relationship with them, that they can sort of handle, like, not that I'm sort of beating anyone up in my sessions, but like that they can handle some of the things that I might say with them. And most, I think, good therapists know that in the beginning of work, you're not trying to light someone up by telling them all the things telling them about themselves and all the things they need to change or all the problems. Like, a good therapist is going to listen and sort of over time help you come to deal with these things in a way that you can handle.
Right, right. I mean, this is not a read session
No,
for the viewers. This is not. This
no.
is for your well-being. This is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there's definitely going to be sessions where you're going to felt read. But again, like, depending on your relationship with your therapist, you know that, and when our friends read us, like, when our friends do it in a way that we know, you know me, and what you're saying is cutting to the truth and maybe stings a little bit, but you've got a point. I think a good therapist is the same way.
Right.
Like, you know the person well enough, and you can say these things that they know that you're not coming from a place that you're trying to be critical or mean or judgmental.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because some days, honestly, Dr. Cal, and also to our viewers, some days I left there in tears. Some days I left there pissed off.
These are all
Dare she say that to me? But it was the truth, and I needed to hear it. I mean, that's the reason I was there, you know. So it's like, okay, if we're here, we're gonna do it. Or
and
no.
that's okay. And one of the things I teach my students is, like, clients don't have to leave the session feeling good, happy, optimistic, positive. Like, therapy is deep, it's real, it's difficult, and there will be times that clients will leave upset, angry, sad, hopeless, and that's okay. I mean, as long as they're safe and they're not going to hurt themselves or anyone else, like, the people, when they're processing their stuff, it's not always going to feel like a great positive experience. And so I teach my students to not try and put on rose-colored glasses with every session, that everyone should be happy and smiling when they leave.
Yeah, then the mission wasn't accomplished. If that's the only thing that you were seeking, you know. But yeah, which that brings me to our next point, number 4, interview. Which basically this is like trying on shoes because you have to see if they fit. So
Yeah.
it says interview 2 to 3 therapists to find the best fit. This fit is one of the most research supported factors related to how therapy will go for you.
Yeah. So even with the people who come to see me, I will tell them. Some folks might see it as bad business practice, but I actually see that this is a good business practice, because when someone comes to see me, I say, if this doesn't feel right for you, and if it doesn't feel like it's going to click, you should find someone else. And that's not a bad thing. It's so much of why therapy works and is helpful is because of the therapeutic relationship that you have with your counselor. And so I'll tell people who I'm talking with, interview 2 or 3 other people and get a sense from them what their style is. You should go with the person who you feel you click with. And clicking with someone, I don't think is always like, you're not going to be checking off boxes necessarily. Like, it's a sort of internal felt sense of, like, okay, this person gets me. This feels good broadly. And for some folks, that fitness has to do with who the counselor is. So we know that clients seek treatment sometimes for people who are very similar to them or very different to them. And so I work with a good amount of queer people, particularly queer men, and they often want someone who is also queer, which I myself am. And so they like that I'm a queer man. There's that shared community, that understanding that they're just not going to get as much from a non-queer person.
True.
Actually, issues related to race or ethnicity, religion, gender, like any of these things are factors that for some of your viewers may be really, really important. And so I often encourage folks to take some time before you call a therapist and say, like, who am I really looking for, and who do I think is actually going to help me?
Right, right. I mean, because we can go, that's a whole nother show for the new season to talk about same gender loving people and mental health. That's a whole, yeah, that's a scope because it's needed. Because
Yeah.
look at all the things that we face,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially in a world who really still, the only way, I'll say it like this, the only way that this world has embraced us is because we've become marketable.
Yeah.
which to me is a dog face shame. It's just like, wow, we're human. You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
yeah,
with any pride parade that happens in any city, we're all sitting by watching all the floats go by, and we're all asking why there's banks in our pride parade, why
hmm
there are different businesses who are going through our pride parade, and we all like to hope and be optimistic that they're doing it to support the cause. But
right.
the cynical side of the community asks how much of this is performative allyship. That you're
Mhm.
just trying to get our dollars. You're not actually concerned about our mental health or our rights.
Right, right. I totally agree. And we're really going to, even because I know we've already hit for this next point coming up,
Mhm,
um, but just dive into it more. Number 5,
mhm.
give yourself a few sessions to determine whether or not you actually want to continue. Be clear if you are leaving to avoid your issues or because there isn't a good as a fit as you thought there were or was. So it to our viewers, this is extremely important. There are steps, there are rams, to this that first of all, it's all for our betterment, but it's also you have to do the work.
Mm.
You have to avail yourself, you have to engulf yourself into it and make a conscious decision, even before you make that first call, even before you get on the websites that we're sharing with you today. You have, it's imperative, it's important
Mm.
that you really invest yourself and invest your time into this.
Yeah.
Please share with us, Dr. Cal.
Yeah, sure. This is very much related to the last point that you really want to sort of see how it goes. That I typically recommend folks give a therapist at least a session, if not 2 or 3 sessions, to see how it goes. You don't know whether or not there's been a fluke in the day, and maybe the therapist was having a bad day, or maybe you were having a bad day and misinterpreting some things. Like, give it a few sessions if it's financially feasible for you. Um, but I think one of the things that we know, actually, there's research to support the idea that most people who leave treatment after the first session.
Hmm.
And there's a whole bunch of ideas as to why that might be happening. One of which is it's just not a good fit, understandably so. Another thing that we might consider is that people freak themselves out. They start talking about some of their stuff, and they get nervous that it's going to be too much, or that, oh my gosh, I've shared too much, that
Hmm.
it's too overwhelming. And so one of the things I might talk with a client about is, how are these sessions going? So the way that I tend to do my work with clients is I'll tell them in the first session that we're probably going to end up meeting, if they're okay with it, about 3 or 4 times. Over the course of the first session, I'm just going to let you talk and tell me what's going on. I usually do this because people come to therapy and counseling because a lot has been on their mind and they've been wanting to get it off their chest.
Right.
It also helps
Right.
me to understand what I would call the presenting problem. So as I get a broad understanding of the presenting problem, I start to get a sense of what the person is struggling with and what it is they're hoping to get from treatment. Typically in the second and third session, I do a pretty broad evaluation of their background. So I ask about things like family history, educational, occupational history, relationships, sexual history, medical history, legal history, substances, all of that stuff. Some may seem relevant, some may seem completely irrelevant to you, but my job is really to kind of get as holistic of an understanding as to what's going on so that I can sort of hone in on what I think we need to do.
Right.
But
Right.
usually at least a session or two. But by the third or
These
fourth
are
session,
all parts of you. These are all parts of that person. Yeah.
of course, and like I said, depending on some approaches, they're not going to give you that much time because they're going to say that first session where we're focusing on the presenting issue, that's what we're doing, and we're moving forward with treatment after the first session.
Right. Right.
Some folks might be very much into that idea, and others might want some space.
Mm. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but typically for the third or fourth session, my questions sort of wind down, and I have an idea of what's going to happen. Typically at that point, I'm first of all going to ask the client, is there anything I haven't asked that you want to share? It's an opportunity for you to share something that is on your mind that we haven't talked about that has sort of come up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll
Mm-hmm.
ask them, like, how has this gone? Over the last 2 or 3 sessions, 4 sessions we've met, what's this been like for you? And this is my attempt to see whether or not there's a fit.
Right.
People in general, because they're nice, will say, this is good. I like this. I like talking about this stuff. That's pretty reasonable, a reasonable response to anyone who's coming to counseling and therapy, but I tend to push a little bit. And I'll say something like, well, what didn't fit, or what didn't feel so great, or what concerns might you have? In that moment, and when a counselor or a therapist asks you this stuff, they're trying to assess maybe the ways in which the therapy needs to be tweaked in a way that is going to be more helpful for you. So recently talked with someone who I think was voicing their concern about focusing in session. And I sort of picked up from them this idea that they wanted me to help them focus a bit more in some of the stuff that they were talking about. But at this third or fourth session, and my language actually in the first 3 or 4 sessions is often, if you decide to come back and if you want to work together. It's a trial period for both people. If a therapist doesn't think that they can help you out, they should be telling you this, preferably before the 3rd or 4th session. And so by that point, we kind of make we both collaborate on, like, and what'll happen is I'll share, well, this is what I think is going on from everything you've told me, and this is what I think we could do moving forward. What do you think about that?
Right. It's a team effort. It's definitely a dual effort, and also while doing my research, I looked up some questions to ask a therapist during the process. And just to name a few, I'll shoot some to you, and we can go from there.
Yeah.
It says, "How long have you been practicing?" It also says, "What licenses and certifications do you have? Which professional organizations do you belong to? How much do you charge?" Great question. How many, can I swipe do I need to swipe my card? Yeah. How many clients have you had with similar circumstances to my own? And also describe your ideal patient. Would you please expound on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard all of the other ones except the last one.
Right.
Which I actually really like the last one, because it allows me the opportunity to tell someone, these are the things I think that is going to make this process most helpful for you. But everything else you said is pretty standard. One of the questions that comes up is related to licensing, and I don't think that the general public knows as much about this. I was just talking with some students today about this, that one of the things that I think is important is that licensing shows you that the person who you're seeing has gone through a process of being supervised for varying amounts of time, and they're approved by a state board to practice this particular thing. So I'm a licensed psychologist. There are licensed counselors, licensed social workers, licensed marriage and family therapists. And so I generally tend to recommend to folks that they seek that.
Now, Dr. Cow, I have to ask this really, I was intrigued by what you just said. So if we may just get a little tidbit, what was your inspiration for you to get into this line of work?
Yeah. I mean, it sometimes sounds so basic, because you hear it actually a lot in this field, but I really like learning about people. I think that the way that people's minds work, it's always struck me that when you're walking down the street in a city, that there are literal worlds going on in people's minds that you will never know, you will never have access to unless you talk to them.
True. So true.
And I'm just... why people do what they do, why they think what they think, and why they feel what they feel is an endless source of fascination for me.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've also, it's been said that I should go into that field.
Yeah.
Because I've always been counseling or helping, someone in some shape, form, or fashion, whether it be spiritually or otherwise, or just on a regular basis, just talking about life. And I'm grateful for the wisdom that I do have. And I'm also a sucker for wisdom. I mean, I just love it. Wisdom is life to me. But I really, the human mind is fascinating. I
Hmm.
have to say that because just the complete, life, real life description that you just gave, little worlds, walk around. I instantaneously saw the streets of New York and how
So
the
many,
busy hustle. It's so many different worlds going
yeah,
on. Even just here, the streets of California here, so many different worlds and so many different things going on. It could be a fantasy, it could be real life they're dealing with, it could be any type of thing.
yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and the other thing too that is a part of it is, and I very much agree with, and is something that I hear a lot from people in the field, is I wanted to help. Like, whether it's pride or hubris or not, like I've always wanted to help and believed that I could be helpful. And so I think that I went into the field because I felt like I was good with people and I could use those skills to help them and to help groups or to help systems try and be different, trying to grow. I don't know. It's something that I felt came to me since I was even a young kid.
Right. Wow. That's awesome. That's
You
awesome. That is
know.
awesome. Um, I have to say, especially with this being our season finale, yay! Um, it's truly an awesome. I just watching you and listening to you, you're like a well of knowledge, and I'm sure. I mean, just sidebar, how many years of schooling was that?
So, I mean, if you count undergrad, it's 9. If it's just grad school, it's 5. I did take a year off in between, or a year off in the middle of my doctoral program. But with undergrad, it's 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That
it's been quite a journey. I remember when I graduated feeling just so relieved to finally be able to do what it was that I wanted to do.
do what you love. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I can definitely tell because there's a difference between people that doing what they love because they have a passion for it, but also, on the flip side, there's those who it's just simply them. And I can truly say, Dr. Cal, this is so definitely you.
Yeah.
So this
Thank
goes
you.
beyond your passion and everything else, which I'm sure it's there because every time you speak, it's there, it's present. But
Yeah.
I mean, this has just been so awesome. Would you give us some last words? Just anything, any wisdom or whatever is on your heart to share, especially
Yeah.
in this during this time of pandemic and craziness and all of those things. What would you tell? Just say there's a group of people that are patient ready. What would you say to them?
I think that people want to help, and not just therapists or counselors. I think that there's a world of people that want to help, that want to support, and it's important to find those people. Obviously, what I do, I love therapy, I love counseling, all that stuff, and that very much fits a lot of people in that profession. But there are people in the community, there are friends, there are family members. Like people want to help and support, and I think sometimes people question that, particularly in some of the times that we live in, that we see some of the really difficult things that we see, like I said at the beginning of the show, in the news and in the media. It's hard to sort of have faith that there's a thread of humanity that wants people to grow and to be healthy and to be safe and to be protected, and just remember that there are those people out there.
Awesome, awesome. We would like to, Dr. Kyle, we would like to share some of your information with the viewers as well, if they can, uh, if we could share your website or what have you, just in case there's somebody watching that is in Philadelphia. He's in Philadelphia, you guys. So if you're there, definitely check him out.
Yeah.
Uh, and you won't regret it. I promise you, you won't.
Yeah.
This, I have to say that mental health and doing the work, it's worth it.
Mhm.
It's nothing easy. As we share with you, it can be gruesome.
Mhm.
It can be downright hard, uh, but it's worth it. Um, because at the end of it, because I know, especially for me, you can get comfortable in your own pigsty, in the pigsty of your worries and your mental imbalance and all of those things, because you get so tired of fighting. Once you find a little cubby hole, it's like, oh, I'm going to stay right here safe. But still, yet those things are not being dealt with, and they grow and they
Yeah.
fester. on the human mind as well as your body, because when it's here, it trickles down. So we need more people like you, Dr. Cal. I promise you we do. So what's for you in the future? Are you going to have your own buildings or show, or what's in the future for Dr. Cal?
Well, I've recently been thinking about expanding my business to bring on clinicians of my own who I would train and supervise and all of that stuff.
Awesome.
I've been recently getting involved in figuring out how to be more supportive to community mental health practitioners. So I work in private practice, which is often associated more with people who have money and ready access to those services. Community mental health needs a lot of more support than people in private practice. So I have a lot more interest in getting more involved in that.
Right. Because I can definitely see you on a show. Dr. Kyle show, we have all the other doctors up there. Why not Dr. Kyle?
Yeah, definitely Dr. Kyle. No, Dr. Phil.
No. We don't want that. We don't want that at all. That would be it's a hard no for me. Yeah.
Be a pass for me.
It's like, yeah, no. Dr. Kyle's like, but yeah, we definitely appreciate you sharing with us all of these. And this is just five bullet points, you guys. And there's so much more, I'm sure, to say and tell. I want to share with all of you why Dr. Kyle is here. All of you can go to www.psychologytoday.com. You can also go to, as we shared earlier, www.openpathcollective.org. And also, Dr. Kyle's website is www.drkylschultz.com. That's www.drkylschultz.com. So this has been awesome. Dr. Kyle, thank you so much.
Thank you
for making this season finale so worth it and so meaningful. We appreciate your time, your professional time and patience with us. And hopefully in the next season, we'll see you again. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Kyle. Have an awesome evening. Well, hey, this is it's the end, but yet it's just the beginning. First of all, before I go any further, I want to share and talk to those of you who may be dealing with suicide. You're not alone. There's someone waiting to talk to you. I promise you, you're not alone. I know it's rough. You may feel isolated, feel like no one understands, because you can also be around a group of people, but alone. But you're not alone. There's someone that's ready to talk to you. And also, I wanted to encourage you to seek out a therapist. I know it's a long journey. I know it's rough. It's a process. It can be tedious, but you're worth it. Check it out. Also, don't forget, even though this is a season finale, don't forget to tune in to City Love Speaks tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be talking about the political debate recap. And it's going to be amazing. It's going to be exciting. And we're going to be laying out and talk about all of the points. So it's definitely going to be a show. So bring your wine and push play. But most definitely, thank you so much for making this first season so worth it. Stay tuned for updates on seasons at Working It Out with Damian Michael Williams. Thank you again. My name is Damian Michael Williams, and this is Working It Out. Be blessed. Be encouraged. You are loved. Till next season.